Hey folks, Dan Fedor here. I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about what we've been up to since our last devlog, which was December. We've been continuing the hardening phase I mentioned in the last devlog. So that's bug fixes, quality of life improvements, performance fixes to the game, generally trying to make what's there now more enjoyable to players before we start adding more stuff in the future. So if you haven't fired up the game in a while, one of the first things you're going to notice is our character creation now has more hairstyles and more beards, quite a few more in fact. So a modder, Terry, had a mod called Mop Tops, which so many people were using, and we really liked the artwork, and we thought, well, we should make this part of the game. So we reached out to Terry, we came to an agreement, compensated him for his work. And so now you'll see those in the game. They're officially part of the game. And on that same page, you're going to notice we added indicators for which variant you're using and how many variants there are total to help you find that same option again in the future. You'll also notice on the skill and traits part of the character creation, we've consolidated that into one UI now, and you can choose multiple at a time, or none at all. You can cancel without having to commit. So we made that a little bit more like it used to be when the game first came out, as well as like Neo Scavenger. You can kind of add bonuses and malices to sort of balance out your costs, and then whatever you end up having as an overage in points you haven't compensated for, that gets charged to you as years. Let's see, the AI has had a ton of work, character AI, the way your crew behaves and what they do. So a big part of that is airlocks. They should be smarter about when they go through airlocks. They'll be a lot less likely to go through an airlock. In fact, without your permission on the roster UI, they'll almost never go out an airlock unless it's an emergency and they're dying and they're trying to get to air. Similarly, their helmet use should be a lot smarter now. They won't put a helmet on if they don't need it. They'll take it off, refresh, and put it right back on instead of dropping it on the floor. And generally know when to refresh their helmet better than they used to. Things like their secondary needs, like hygiene, defecation, amusement, or taking pills, those should start to be getting better and builds as we go. They were basically overusing those things, and we had to put some guardrails on that behavior. Pathfinding should also be a lot better now. Less likely to basically fail a path if you use like a path coming from a weird angle that's hard to navigate, and especially for long paths like across a large ship or two docked ships. Should be more likely to succeed now. Started work on performance. That's going to be an ongoing thing because it's death by a million cuts. What we're focusing on right now, or what we just did, was fix a number of bugs with ships spawning when they shouldn't be spawning. In some cases, we ended up with what we're calling a conga line of hauler ships going out to rescue the last hauler ship that ran out of gas, and mostly because somebody across the system asked for help and they couldn't be reached. Things like that, or like the AI trying to process a command, failing, and then just trying to process it again over and over again, wasting CPU cycles. So you should notice probably some improvement. Definitely in a new game, it shouldn't get worse as quickly as it used to. But even in some old games with so many of these ships spawn, they should be using less resources now. Like I said, we have more work to do with performance. Oh, and related to that, loading saves now loads directly into memory instead of a temporary folder where it was unzipping before and then reading into memory. Those are mainly important to solid state drive users. Let's see, there was a bug in the ship AI, which was basically causing AI to fly at like multiple kilometers a second, sometimes dozens of kilometers a second. Basically, there was a bug that caused them to get stuck in a holding pattern with their accelerator on. And frequently they'd run out of fuel after reaching missile-like speeds. So that should be better now. Paper doll items, this has been an ongoing thing. Probably you've already seen some of the weapons get higher res art when they're in the inventory paper doll. We've continued that through the tools, and we're mostly done with tools, and we're starting to get into containers like toolboxes and crates. And we're also moving that same artwork up into the mega tooltip in the top right. So when you right click on something to read about it, you can see it's nicer art up there now. The battery, we added a new UI to the battery. So it'll show you what the current load is on the battery and then estimate approximately how much time it has left at that load level. PowerViz got a change so that it's showing how current flows throughout the ship. The line looks kind of like connecting the appliances to a sensor, except it's yellow now instead of blue. Previously, we just had like a chain of yellow icons along the path, and that was a little hard to read. We changed the left Alt key so that it highlights everything you could interact with, even though everything is technically interactive. Some things are more interactive than others, like doors or containers or items on the floor. So those will light up now if you hold down left Alt, and anything that we've hooked up in the UI with a hotkey will show the hotkey near that UI item. Previously, that was the 9 key to like the highlight interactables, and nobody really knew it was there. So we moved that to the left Alt, which is a little more traditional, but also added a tutorial step to that. And the photosensitivity options we added to the options menu should help with people who have issues with flickering lights or spinning stars in the background, sparks from construction. Coming back to the tutorial, we added a few other changes to the tutorial, rewording things or a few steps here and there that kind of make it a little bit clearer what's going on. And then at the end of the tutorial, there's now a handcrafted derelict, which should be a little bit easier for people to figure out game systems if they're seeing them for the first time. But it also, the loot you'll get off of it is a little more consistent instead of previously where you'd sometimes dock with something that was nothing more than, you know, a couple floor panels and a piece of trash. We have more to do there in terms of tutorializing, but at least I think people are starting to get the hang of things better than they used to with this new derelict at the end. The ledger had a number of changes to it. One problem was a lot of stuff was getting buried in the past, and then you'd get late fees on top of that, but you wouldn't know how to pay them. That's all front page now, so if you can pay it, it's on the front page. And then things should be consolidated a little bit better so you don't get millions of late fees on top of late fees on top of late fees. And the nav ship logs, this is a minor thing, but if you've stepped away from the nav and you come back and you wanted to know, like, why did the autopilot shut down, or when did it shut down, more importantly, or, you know, did we just collide with something? The logs will now say, you know, major events like that, a dock or an undock event. So you can kind of see like what the ship's been up to lately. We think we might even be able to use that for some slightly more interesting log events in the future. But yeah, a few people were asking for that kind of logging, so that should be there now. And then just a bunch of other smaller fixes that I won't mention now, but if you want, you can go to the Steam news. The change lists are all pretty detailed about what we've been working on. But yeah, it's like I said, we're continuing with the hardening phase, probably be doing that a little while longer before we get into milestone 15 in earnest. And I want to thank you all for taking your time to watch the video, and I'll talk to you soon.